A little bit.
All right, we're ready? Okay, hi everybody. My name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I am going to be walking you through a watercolor lesson with my children. They are now 7 and 11. All right, so this is a project that actually we're going to be combining 2 different lessons into one. Originally, we wanted to do some wet on wet watercoloring with a single color and do negative space with trees, so somewhat of a winter theme, and then another one that had negative space with snowflakes. So, yeah, but we're running out of time for this unit. Spring is upon us, and we still wanted to do this one with this beautiful blue paint here. Oops. Oh my goodness, that almost, oh my gosh. That's okay, because it's supposed to be that color anyway, but I really want it to,
oh dear.
That's okay. Let me go wash this off, and I'll be right back. All right, so, no biggie. Thankfully, all of it's going to be blue. Put that aside. It's getting all over the place. All right, let's start by wetting our watercolor paper. This is Strathmore watercolor paper, and it is 14 inches by 22 inches, I think. And it is 140 pound. And you want a really heavy watercolor paper that's a good quality, because when you get it completely wet, if it's not a good quality heavyweight watercolor paper, it's just going to tear, and kind of like a really cheap paper towel that kind of starts to shred. You don't want that. You want the nice, really good kind. All right.
That looks really nice.
It does, doesn't it? Hold on, let me move this aside so everybody can see. All right, so I am just, you can barely, okay, so here's my container here, so it's quite large, and I am just getting my paper wet. All right, let me, and I'm not, keeping it in there. I'm just kind of like a conveyor belt, just kind of getting it all in. All right, so I'm gonna put this, oh no, it's okay, you can leave that here. I'm gonna move this to my left, and then I'm gonna show everybody what I actually just did, because you can't really see it. So, all right, so we're just gonna put it in. We're not gonna leave it in. We just wanna get it in with the water. There. Okay. So that's the second one. Now they're still really, really wet. Let me get the third one in, and then I'm gonna show you how to prep them before you actually do your watercoloring. Okay, there. Now you could cut this page down in half, but we're gonna keep it full size today. All right, so I took them out of the water, and I'm now going to use a sponge just to remove the excess water. And I'm just doing this on my scrapbook table. But if you didn't have a surface that you felt comfortable just doing wet on wet watercoloring, then you could get a painting board, or you could make your own out of materials from the hardware store. So I'm just doing the top, and you just want it, I'm not going to get it drier than this because I'm still getting my kids set up, and so I'm going to hand them over this paper. And until we get the rest of the stuff set up, it's going to continue to dry a little bit. But you want it so that you can see a bit of a sheen to it. Let me see if I can get the light to catch it. You can kind of see it there. But you don't want any pools of water. So this seems just right. I'm going to put that one aside. And I am just lightly removing the excess water. There's not a whole lot. And still, the paper itself is wet because the back is still pretty wet. So I'm going to get this onto my son's working area. And I'm going to take the one that I spilled paint on. It's almost off anyway. This paper is so big that you can't even see the whole piece. But anyway, I'm going to finish getting the extra water off of this one. Then I'm going to show you the paintbrushes as well as the paints. Okay, so we are using our Stockmar watercolor paints. These come in either 3 or 6 colors, or you can buy them individually. And they are concentrated, so you actually need to dilute this with water, and I did so previously in these little jars. And I have a video tutorial on how to do this. The only thing is that you don't want to mix too much at one time. You just don't want your watercolors to get some mold and just start to smell. It's just not very pleasant, even though they still work. You just don't want to do that. So don't mix too much to begin with. A little goes a long way. These will definitely last about a year, in my experience with, you know, pretty regular watercoloring. All right, so the two colors that we have for today, which we're only going to be using one, but because I already have both these colors mixed, I'm just going to offer either or to my children. And we have the Prussian blue and the ultramarine blue. This is the Prussian blue. It's one of my favorites, like this beautiful deep blue. And then the one that I spilled on my paper to begin with, and this is ultramarine blue. And so the paintbrushes we're using today, we're using mostly these ones, but I only have two of them, so I'm going to give both of these to my kids. These are wide, and these are, you know, they're pretty big. You don't want to go for like a small paintbrush like this for the younger years. So kindergarten, first grade, this is a really good paintbrush to use. And I forgot what else I was going to say. So I'm going to hand these over to my kids because I only have two. I'm just going to use one of these for myself, which is fine. And then I got some blue paint for my son, so I'm going to hand that over to him, and then I'm going to see which one my daughter wants. Do you want you want this one? Okay, and then I'll take this one. Oh, you with this? Okay, go ahead. You know what? And yours is starting to dry. It happens to be a pretty warm day, and the papers are already starting to dry. So let me go get. Oh, you know what? And yours is on. Yeah, it's just that I want you to be on a flatter surface. All right, so my paper had already started to dry, so I'm just getting it wet again. This is I filled it up with water. And then I'm just kind of mopping it up again, just because it's a very warm day, and now my kids are going to do that as well. There you go, pumpkin. Okay, so my son didn't want to use this one, so I gave him mine, and I will use his. So we are going to start. Let me open this up for my girl. There you go. We are going to start with just blue right in the center. So you can go ahead and hold on one second, pumpkin. We're going to dip our paintbrush into our watercolor paint, and then we're going to remove the excess by just dragging the paintbrush along the edge of your container, which means you're not going to have a whole lot on your paintbrush. And then we're just going to start in the middle, okay? And we can start with just a circle, or just kind of grow a shape from the middle. Very nice. I love this color.
I like this color.
Do you like that one?
We're still a circle.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep growing it all the way to the outside of the page.
So the entire page?
Yeah. So at this point, we're all just working together just to grow the blue.
The whole thing.
We're gonna do blue the whole way through. Now, in part, we want to make sure that we're using our paintbrush correctly, and you are. We want to just drag the paintbrush. We don't want to go back and forth like this. We don't want to crush the bristles of the paintbrush. We just want to, almost as though you are sweeping the floor, we're just going to keep going.
Sometimes you go back and forth. Like,
you can. If you want to, then you can go ahead and go back and forth like this. But you want to keep your paintbrush at all times. You want all the bristles going in the same direction. Sometimes, let me move this a little bit. So This hasn't been a problem for many years, but initially my boys were a little bit rougher with the paintbrush. But oftentimes, and I really don't want to actually demonstrate, but let me try to explain, they would press so hard with the paintbrush, and it wasn't one like this, it was one like this. So these bristles are a little bit stiffer versus these ones, which it's very likely using this kind that you would press down too hard and you would get the metal part onto your paper. And so they would go back and forth and they would leave indentations in the paper because the metal was just digging into the paper. They held on so hard and they were going back and forth, and so it took a lot of training, and sometimes we wouldn't do it because the kids maybe were too young or just had too much energy. And for me, this is a really meditative process, but for other children, it might be a more involved process mentally. But you want to be conscious of how you're using your products, your paintbrushes, your paints, and even your paper. There should be reverence with everything that you're doing and how you're treating it. So even though we're only doing one drawing today, hopefully this will take a while for us to do it. It'll be an opportunity to do a couple of different art designs and really provide an opportunity to do a story to go along with this painting. So since we did not have the opportunity to do the story before we did the painting, we can go ahead and do a story now. So for me, this looks like we're looking into a forest. I feel like there are trees kind of.
It looks like a pumpkin, a blue.
It looks like a blue pumpkin. For me, it feels like this dark center here is the center of like this forest, and we don't get forests like that around here. We get big oak trees and open spaces and canyons. But being in a forest that's tight and dark and cozy and has bears and trees and sometimes and a cabin, a little house, that sounds really cozy and nice for the winter. So very nice. Do you want to try?
Do a circle I just painted.
I see that. At least you did well with your paintbrush. Do you want to do it like a circle? That way we can talk about the same story, or do you want to envision something else with yours?
Sure, I guess.
Alright, so you can go ahead and just kind of keep circling it around. And I think of this as a little path into a cozy, beautiful forest right around the time of night where it's still light outside, but the sun has set before it gets too dark. It's a really beautiful time of evening where the stars are just coming out and it's not too cold, and you could probably imagine that something delicious is being cooked and these sweet aromas are coming from your home. Yeah, my daughter ran and got a book that shows just how this feels. Look at that. How gorgeous is that? This one is called The Blue Forest.
And
look at that.
Blue.
It is totally blue. Then we can continue to use this book as inspiration too. So I have enough blue on my paper, and so I am going to grab another paintbrush. Alright, so I went and got some water for this next part of the process, as well as a paper towel and a new paintbrush. So we are going to dip the paintbrush in our water, and then we can just pat dry it. And we're going to start by lifting some of this color. And I am going to envision that this is sort of the center of my page. I imagine that's where the little the little houses, the little cottage, and I want my trees, careful baby, I want my trees to sort of circle, yeah, sort of curve around it. So trees aren't supposed to look like that, but we're going to take some artistic liberties. Okay, ready, pumpkin? All right, so I'm going to go about midway through. Yours is dripping, so just pat dry it. So you don't want it dripping. Just go ahead and pat dry. And we're going to lift up the color. So I'm just going to start and just kind of go down this way. I'm just going to keep doing that and wash my paintbrush and lift it up. All right, so now I'm going to show my son who is still watercoloring his. You want to get your paintbrush wet, and then you just remove the excess water, and that's just enough to lift the color. So I'm envisioning that this is sort of like where our little cozy cottage is going to be, and I am just going to do some trees.
So make the tree circle.
Okay. So next I'm going to add some tree branches and leaves, or, you know, going to envision these as pine trees. Sweetheart, do the tree leaves from the bottom this way. It's okay, it's fine, but if you want to, try doing it from the bottom like this. Do you want to try making your leaves come up from the, do you see how I'm making them come up from the bottom like that? Yeah. Well, do you want to do that too?
Yes.
Okay. So just wet your paintbrush. I forgot to.
Like this?
Well, I'm doing the tree is going up like this, and then I'm making the branches kind of go up like this. Like imagine like a pine tree. You know, the ones that we have near our street. We have some pine trees like this actually near us.
Like this?
Yes, just like that. Okay. A little bit more gentle with, if you're not lifting enough color, then get your paintbrush wet. Okay, so if you just get your paintbrush wet, good. But do you see how it's, can I see this for a minute? Okay, you see this part right here? Yeah, we just went a little bit too rough with the paintbrush. Okay, and the metal scratched into your paper. Let me give you a different paintbrush then instead. Here, how about you use mine instead? Can you use mine? Because mine is flat like that. You see that? Yeah. And then, and don't squeeze it, sweetheart. Just get it wet and then just pat dry it. There you go. But your paper towel is really wet. You want to grab that one over there? And then, and you don't need, don't remove so much water. Just pat it. There you go. There you go. And then you have to pat it again and get it wet again, and back and forth, back and forth. It takes a little while. Okay, very good. If you're finding that you can't lift enough color, yeah, just try putting just water, but be careful because you're flicking the water a little bit. Try just putting water. You see, I think you're taking off too much water on your paintbrush. Just pat once, and now try to do it and see if that helps. Do you want me to empty out your water and get you some fresh water?
Wait a second.
Yeah. Just maybe make your tree branches a little bit closer together, unless that's the style of tree you want, which there are trees that are like that too. Yeah.
Like this? I made a little roof thing.
Yes, you did. You already started on your house?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll make my house too. I'll make my house kind of little. I think I'll make a little chimney too. I think I made it too little. Make a little side house too with it.
That's cute. Cute.
I'm gonna do a little bit of smoke coming out of the chimney.
What? Oh, we've done a house already.
Well, she had made hers, so I thought I would just copy her. Should I do a little path to the house?
I'm doing that. I mean, I wasn't, but I will.
That way we can go visit. I want to go to this little house.
Maybe I can live there.
Maybe I can live there with you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to make some of your trees? I see that they're hiding in your blue.
I don't know how to make them. I want to make them like yours.
You do? All right, let's go figure out what's going on. Okay, I think your paper is too wet. Let's give it a moment to dry. Mine's a little bit drier. All right, so I think that her... No, just let it dry naturally. Don't pat dry it. I think that you need to give your paper a little time to dry, because I think it's a little bit too wet. So when you're going to lift your color, it's not coming out. So you could just take a few minutes. You can go... I can tell you about this little girl who's finding this little house in the woods. Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
Does she have a name?
Mine will be Wendy.
Wendy. Oh, what a beautiful name. Little Wendy was named after the wind because on the night that she was born, there was a terrible storm. But her mama wasn't worried. Nothing happened to her. Her mama wasn't worried. She knew that though there was a terrible storm going on, that Wendy would be born just fine.
What happened to her dad?
Her dad was there too. He went out to get firewood because it was a very cold night. And the wind started to howl. He wasn't worried. He thought on such a cold night, all the animals would be in their little homes. And he could go out and get all the firewood he needed without any worry at all. And indeed, by the time he got home, the fire was just going out had just the last little bit of fire left in the fireplace. And from the other room, he heard his baby for the first time. Wendy had come so fast. Just like the way the wind howls, she had come into this world. Now, Wendy grew up in the forest. She knew it well. She wasn't afraid of the forest like some children are. She knew just where to go to find wild strawberries, where to dig up roots that were safe to eat. Oh, when she grows up. Now she's 10. And it's very cold. And she is also going out to see if she can get more firewood for the house. She tell me again. Oh. So on her way back into the house, she sees something in the darkness. And she's a little bit worried at first because she's not quite sure what's in the darkness. There's something appears to be lurking behind these beautiful tall trees that are white with snow. And Wendy calls out, "Hello!" But as soon as the words leave her mouth, they get swallowed up by the wind, and no one can hear her, not even herself. "Hello!" she tries again, but still nothing. Okay. Oh, very nice. Yeah, keep going.
How about in the house?
You're basically just removing the color to make the roof and the other bits of the house. So Wendy is not quite sure what is lurking behind these trees, and she knows to be very careful because though there are no bears wandering around in the cold winter, there could be a bear out by accident. So Wendy wants to be very careful. So she grabs hold of her bundle of sticks and she goes closer and closer to the house so that she can be ready to spring inside the back door should anything happen. But she's walking cautiously and slowly. She doesn't want to alarm whatever could be hiding behind that tree. As she gets closer, the clouds start to part, and in the moonlight, Wendy recognizes the shape. Who is it? Grandma! Wendy yells and sprints to her grandmother. Grandma! Grandma, what are you doing here? Oh dear, Grandma says. I meant to surprise you. What are you doing out so late? It's so cold. I went to go get some firewood. Oh dear. Well, what are you doing out so late? Wendy says. And Grandma looks at Wendy and smiles and says, good point. Let's get inside. I am sure your mama has something delicious to eat because I can smell it all the way out here. So Grandma and Wendy go into the house, and sure enough, Mama has stew on the stove and something delicious baking in the oven. She has apple pie baking in the oven, but this time she did not put cinnamon on the apples, so they just smell like apples and sugar. And it smells so good that Wendy considers not even eating dinner. She changes her mind when Mama brings the stew to the table. Just then, Wendy realizes that she is very hungry, and she cannot wait to have a big bowl of stew.
The end.
The end. Well, let's see. Wendy eats her stew, which is so delicious. And her papa tells her a story about when he was a boy. And Wendy's grandma tells her about her long journey to the woods and how she got lost, but thankfully she made it to the cabin before it got too dark and she couldn't find her way. And then at the very end, Grandma gives Wendy a present. Grandma had knitted Wendy a beautiful hat, and it had Wendy's name on it, and Wendy thought it was the most beautiful hat. And she put it right on because even though the fireplace was going, it started to get a wee bit cold.
I really want to do dots, I guess.
Nice.
Okay. How do you do your tree so fast?
Well, because my paper is now quite a bit dry, I am just adding water to my paper and then washing off my brush, and that seems good enough to reactivate the paint, and it's enough to give me a good negative image of the trees.
There we go. There's my long path.
Yeah.
I really like it.
I really like it too.
Where should I hang it?
Let's
Maybe
find.
my room.
You can hang it in your room.
I don't know. Yeah, my room.
Okay. Do you want to do any snowflakes or any stars
I am.
and the moon? Oh, you did do the stars. Do you want to do... I'm going to do a little crescent moon.
I did a moon.
Oh, very nice.
That's exactly what I was.
I'm going to do a little crescent moon right here.
I mean, it looks like a sea more.
It does look like a sea.
But I don't care. Moons look like seas. This is a long... What are glaciers?
Glaciers?
Well, this is a long banner, I guess.
Yeah.
But it actually froze, so it's an ice banner.
Okay. So I think I'll do a couple of stars. And if we do stars, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap my paintbrush, and any place where there's water, that will end up being a star. Okay, so I am going to just decorate with a couple of snowflake designs.
I don't like that face.
You don't? Oh, you can just put blue over it then. So very lightly I'm going to go straight up and then almost like an X, which is really actually kind of challenging to do. So maybe this won't be such a good idea. It's
And
like,
this is the girl taking home the wood in the back.
oh, the girl's taking home the wood. Where's her grandma?
My grandma's in the bushes already.
Why is the grandma in the bushes?
I thought she was surprised.
I know. I could see your grandma doing that.
Really? What? You could see.
I could see grandma like hiding in the bushes to surprise you guys. That's something that she would do.
Hiding in the bushes?
Maybe she could even climb the tree.
The person walking up. I like it.
Excellent.
And
Okay.
then one snowflake's gonna be right there. Another's gonna be right there. And then another one's gonna be right there. Maybe I'll do one more person. Actually, I like my people.
You like your people?
There's two people hiding in the bush. Actually, this is the mom just in her backyard, I mean in her front yard.
Oh, wow, you got a whole family there.
And the dad's inside doing work.
The dad's inside
Or
doing work.
he's actually outside doing work in the garden.
He is.
Freezing garden.
Yeah. Maybe he has to feed the animals in the barn.
Sure.
Does he have a car or a horse?
Horse.
Hmm. Does he have a phone?
Of course not.
Of course not. I'm just wondering how long ago this is. Do you want to go to a cabin where you don't have a phone?
Well, we already have a phone.
Well, sometimes you might not have reception. Do you want to go to... Oh, how about we go to that one cabin? Remember?
What?
What, by the lake that you guys like?
Yeah.
Lake Quinault, I think it is.
Yes.
Do you want to go
I
there?
want to stay for a long time.
Me too. That was a really nice lake. Oh, you can't see my...
Do you want to show them mine?
Yeah.
The people.
Hmm.
That looks really nice. Actually, I really want to try one.
You can have both.
No, let's put it this one
Oh,
in the
hold on.
school
It's not
room.
dry, so I wouldn't move
Yeah,
it
let's
yet.
put this one in the school room and this one in my
Those-
room.
Sure. Those are those little snowflakes I did at the bottom that you couldn't see.
Can. And you can.
Oh.
Wow, that was nice.
All right. So my daughter ended up doing, instead of the negative for the tree, or, you know, what do you call that? Negative space for the tree. She just did positive space with more blue. All right, and my son is 11, so he's able to do the negative space a little bit more. And he's got his stars up in the sky. Do you want to do a moon? Oh, very nice. And you do, where is it? Oh, nice, I missed it. And then your snowflakes, which are just kind of like a design element since they're far too big. Okay, so this project has come to an end, and we've had kind of mixed results with it. I'm thinking that maybe working with negative space is going to be a little bit challenging for my 7-year-old, and admittedly it is something that requires a lot of patience to have to wait to see an image emerge after removing the color over and over and over again. So I probably will either do a more simple project if we decide to do negative space in the future, or just skip it entirely. My daughter's really pleased with the outcome of her project, even though it wasn't what we intended to do. We got the images that we wanted, but it wasn't the lesson that I had intended to do. And to be honest, the lesson kind of changed a couple of times before we got to this point anyway. We were kind of merging a couple of lessons together. So I'm like kind of okay with this one, not super crazy about it. My kids did enjoy doing the watercoloring, and that's really important. I think with my daughter's work, the paper just got too wet. She just kept adding too much water to it and paint. And so by the time she needed to lift the color, it just was not working as easily as mine, which I got it painted and then, you know, was helping the kids and just didn't oversaturate my paper. And so when it was time to lift the color, it came out a lot easier. So my daughter kind of got discouraged early on, though she didn't express discouragement. She just kind of was not pleased with the way it was looking and just kind of went off on her own and just started adding, you know, paint to create the images rather than lift the paint to create the images. My son is 11. He was able to do this a lot easier, even though he wasn't quite impressed with the shape of his trees and the little cottage that he made. But in the end, this project was okay. I'm not super thrilled about it, if you can tell. I didn't have time to prepare a story. I'm not so great at doing stories just spontaneously. I'm not great at doing stories in general, but especially spontaneously, they usually don't turn out, you know, all that interesting. So we really just kind of use the colors and the images just to kind of build, like, you know, what this might be like for a little person in the woods, and we just kind of create a story around that, and that's fine. And my daughter likes it, and that's the point. You know, it doesn't have to be this stellar novel. The little people like it, and so that's a success for me. So if you want to see some of the other projects we're doing for either our winter unit or our real-time lessons, I've left a couple of playlists here on the screen. You can tap them and check those out. Don't forget that if you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.